Hi, everyone. Welcome to Meet the Mailers. I'm Paul Bobnack for Who's Mailing What, and today I'm talking with two execs for RWT Production LLC. With me today are Cindy Barham, she's VP Client Services, and Jeff Thomas, Director of Business Development. And we'll be talking about production management along with a lot of other topics. Now, before we get started, if you have any questions or feedback, please comment in the box below. You can show your support for the channel by tapping the like button. And to get notified of when we add new videos, click on subscribe. Now let's meet the mailers. Hi, Cindy and Jeff. Thanks for being here today. Welcome, welcome.
Thanks, Paul.
Why don't we start by talking about your individual stories, how you got involved with print and direct mail. And why don't you start, Cindy?
My name is Cindy Barham. I am based in Central Illinois. And after I had finished at the University of Illinois, I wasn't really sure what I wanted to do. I was managing a restaurant. A friend came in and said that he owned a mail shop, and I had no idea what that meant. But looking to not work weekends, I thought, all right, I'll go in and interview for this and see how it goes. Well, he didn't hire me. 3 months later, the person that he did hire left, so then I got my opportunity. And started at a mail shop. I was there very briefly, 3 months before the salesperson that I was supporting left. And I moved into the sales position role at the mail shop that I was at, and quickly grew into supporting all of our customer service staff and then managed the sales team. And the owner of our company, Pete Taylor, was one of my clients, and he had started out on his own and said, hey, at some point, we'll decide when this works for both of us. You can come work for me. And about 2 years after he started RWT, I joined him and have been here for almost 17 years, running the daily support for RWT. So started at a mail shop. That's where it all started for me.
Wow, that's great. That's actually a fairly common story I've heard. Being in the right place at the right time.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So how about you, Jeff?
Yeah, this is definitely one of my favorite questions in our industry, because I haven't stumbled upon anybody that went to Harvard for, direct mail production.
No.
So I actually started as a summer job while I was going to college. And I was at a letter shop just like Cindy. And I guess not to date myself, but my first position was pulling mail bags off of a Cheshire.
Oh, wow. Yeah. Yep.
So that tells you how long I've been doing this. But yeah, I guess spent, a few summers there while I was going to college and kind of just graduated my way up on the production floor. Obviously pulling mail bags on a Cheshire is pretty darn boring. So I really just kind of, asked people to train me on different pieces of production equipment. So on the Cheshire, obviously, ended up tying, sorting, feeding, worked my way to inserters, inkjets, bindery equipment, worked in the warehouse. I mean, really pretty much worked in every square inch of that facility on the production floor. Now, since then, I've worked at a few different production facilities, mail shops since then, prior to RWT. Not to say that it's this rags to riches story, but, certainly from the bottom floor up. I mean, worked on the production floor, ended up being a production assistant, then a production manager. The second company I went to is when I got into sales. And while, sales and business development is most of what I've done, I've been still involved in every bit of production and process and all that good stuff. So, yeah, basically from pulling bags off of Cheshire to all the way up to VP of Sales and Business Development. Kind of worn all the hats through my career.
Mm-hmm. Well, it's a great way to know the business, right?
I can still run an inserter too.
Yeah. So why don't each of you tell me about what your basically your day-to-day daily role involves with RWT?
So I manage our staff and basically control all the quality control procedures. We control workflow. I manage how our staff is interacting with the support that RWT provides for them. And since we are all remote and RWT has always been remote, That was kind of the vision from the very beginning, is that we wanted to hire the best staff. And so to do that, we had to be flexible. And the thing that we found for us was the biggest benefit was making sure that all of our staff could live wherever they wanted to live. So that had provided some challenges in the beginning. We were clearly set up when COVID happened, and we just kept on going. But so that's basically my role, is facilitating functionality, if you will, quality control procedures within our staff and our clients.
Okay. And how about you, Jeff?
And for me, I mean, director of business development, obviously somewhat self-explanatory. Obviously just driving, building the book of business, whether it's through existing relationships or fostering new ones. I guess the really biggest part of my role probably is we support a lot of national industry associations. I guess I don't know if I should hit the acronyms because it might just acronyms to your audience. Direct Marketing Association of Washington, Direct Marketing Fundraisers Association, Association of Fundraising Professionals, a lot of industry associations that we're doing sponsoring events and that sort of thing. Okay. So obviously we need to have a presence at those events that we sponsor.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. That's a great way to network as well. So let's get right to it. Can we just talk about get an overview of the solutions that RWT offers to marketers and to nonprofits?
Do you want to run with that one, Cindy, or?
I certainly can. One of the things, as I mentioned, is when I was introducing what I did is that we have found that hiring the top level in our field has been really beneficial, so that we can integrate ourselves directly into nonprofit organizations or the agencies that support nonprofit organizations. We bring all the creative, all the best practices to the table, and make sure that we're not allowing any pitfalls. So with integrating into that, it helps us to provide the solution just right off of the bat. We can do production 101 classes with their staff. We can implement anything that they want to do on the tactical side with understanding what the promotions are going to do to them, what laying out a piece of art on a press sheet is going to do if they want to undersize it, make it a little bit larger. Starting with budget by really integrating ourselves into their platform. We know right from the very top where they are budget wise and how to guide them through the overview of what they're trying to accomplish.
Mm-hmm. Okay, well that's great, because I want to talk a lot about production. What are some best practices for planning a direct mail campaign before it even leaves the building? So I'm thinking of printing methods, design, formats, things like that.
We could probably talk about this for a good few hours.
Right.
I think the common theme that Cindy and I would probably just repeat ad nauseum is plan. And I guess I'd probably even back up prior to that and say, depending on who your production partner is, whether it's a direct vendor or a management company like us, really bringing them in early in the process, constant communication. If you're dealing directly with a production vendor, I would highly recommend visiting that facility, really seeing what the equipment is, how it runs, what their processes are. That's actually something that we recommend for our clients and facilitate that as well. I think, certainly for my 25 plus years at production facilities, I can't stress that enough, to really go out there and experience what this equipment can do, how fast it can run, what the processes are, and just really try to understand it from your production partner's point of view. I guess back to my plan. I think obviously Cindy and I always talked about how we're on kind of the tactical side of things, right? The nonprofits and agencies normally work on creative and strategic, and really I think at that stage you should really be involving your production partner. While maybe the audience you're mailing to, or the response rate you're expecting, or if it's an acquisition or renewal, some of that might not matter to your production partner. But really, more info is better than not enough.
Right.
So I think that's key. But I think obviously once the rubber meets the road and you actually have all the creative and strategy figured out, well, then, to my point about spending 3 hours on this, you can really get in the weeds, right?
Yeah,
You've got
totally.
Data management, data processing, where you're talking about data hygiene. Not that I want to go down the rabbit hole of data security, but all that is getting really wacky these days. So that obviously adds some complication to it. But then, you're just talking about the processes of NCOA. Are you going to run ACS, PCOA, CAS certification? Just on data alone, we can probably really get in the weeds on
easily 3 hours on that.
Exactly. Yeah. So obviously you're going to transition to personalization and variable copy, and does it make sense to run it digitally versus offset? And that's like I said, plan and communication is just something that we just, people probably get tired of hearing us say it. I mean, certainly one of my sayings, and I know everybody I worked with on the production side got tired of hearing me saying is proactive rather than reactive.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You're trying to make sure and avoid any of those pitfalls and mistakes that you've made in the past, and make sure that everything runs smoothly, on time, and on budget.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess that's like a really vague 30,000 foot view, but I
Right.
don't really get into the. I mean, I'm a production guy, so I'll talk production all day long.
Yeah. No, I think that's a really good summary of it. And that sort of springboards into my next question, which is what challenges do you face when coordinating or partnering with strategy firms or agencies or brands, as well as other clients or even the USPS?
I think some of it goes with what Jeff is saying, is of making sure that your production partner is part of the plan early enough.
Mm-hmm.
So to go back and touch a little bit on what Jeff said. So if you're mailing a small to middle range file, our production mail shops have done a great job of investing in technology recently. So whereas old school, talk about the Cheshire label life, back in the day, you printed the forms with the pins on the side and you lasered them through a laser on only black ink. Well, these days, mail shops really are investing in how to maximize their profitability. And so by doing that, they're bringing in digital work, digital printers, print on demand, variable technology. And, so by allowing your production partner a glimpse into some of the plans that you're doing, can then allow that production person to say, this is a perfect project to run digital or to print on demand, or we can integrate this into, different fields from your data. If we know you like dogs, we know you like cats, we know you came into an acquisition package with a widget, we can talk about the widget instead of the whirligig, we can talk about the whirligig. And so that's been really, really great with how invested our partners are with helping, especially us, because we support nonprofits specifically, helping our clients to stay successful. So coordinating and partnering with our agencies is making sure that we're in the loop early enough so that we can provide the most efficient way to handle something. And the same thing with USPS. We have relationships with different liaisons at USPS based upon different segments of work. We have a political partner that we work with that helps understand what's going into the market in the political cycles. We have other business development people. We have people that partner with us specifically on the promotions, design, rates and classification. So all of those helps us to kind of make sure that we're doing what we need to do for our clients and ahead of the game before we submit a mailing and realize that something's wrong.
That's smart. That's a smart way to go.
I think the USPS challenge, that's an important thing to hit on as well. I mean, obviously they are a very important cog in the process. It might be at the tail end of, where you're injecting this mail into the mail stream, but to have strong relationships and partnerships there are key. I mean, I can certainly do some USPS bashing over all the years that I've dealt with them. Because I think really probably my biggest frustration with the USPS was just the inconsistency that you could see from one post office to the next.
Right.
But that's definitely improved a ton over I guess ever since they've implemented full service and seamless acceptance. A lot of things that make things more cohesive and consistent across the country.
Right. And earlier in the process.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we all know that postage costs, consumables is top of mind for a lot of people. What kinds of things can people do to keep their costs under control?
Yeah, key question, especially in recent years, right? I think probably where I'd hit first is data. And I guess from the planning perspective, like we hit on before, I'm talking about like from the nonprofit point of view, kind of paring down the data you're selecting for the mailing, right? Kind of mailing to your best recipients, your best responders. No point in mailing a large list to a lot of people that haven't responded or given in a long time. I think additionally on the data side, just making sure that data's clean, right? Back to what I'd mentioned about all the processes on data, NCOA, PCOA, ACS, making sure that there's no duplicates, making sure that this mail is going to get to the intended recipient. Obviously, if you're mailing a pretty high touch piece that's fairly expensive per piece, if you have 300 records in there that are undeliverable, where that's just trash. It's wasted money. I guess other than that, obviously we've talked about postal promotions. I think that's a no-brainer these days.
Yeah.
Obviously, post office is raising rates twice a year now, but at the same time, they've continued to roll out new promotions left and right. And so not only do you offset that potential postage rate increase, but you're looking at an additional touch with things like informed delivery and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
Certainly we can talk about kind of the rebirth of the QR code, but I mean, there's a lot of promotions there that again, I think you're really missing the boat if your vendor partner or your production management partner doesn't have you enrolled in those. I guess other than that, good old gang printing, bulk printing, again, kind of looking at the programs holistically. If I think a pitfall definitely some organizations fall into is looking at it job by job, right? To where, especially if they have a robust program that you're mailing 10, 12, plus mailings a year and you're using the same number 10 envelope, the same BRE, well, obviously there's some savings there to print for the entire year rather than job by job.
Sure.
Obviously, I think that's sort of just known knowledge in the industry, or should certainly do it. But it is still surprising how many organizations, like I said, get the blinders on, kind of look at it job by job and go, oh, wait a second, I could have saved X amount of dollars throughout the year.
Yeah, I think we both be surprised by how many still, do that. Yeah.
Yep. Yeah, and I think I guess Cindy's point about digital printing. I mean, even along the lines of gang printing and how it's been around forever, digital printing, similarly, right? But I think the technology is just really just kind of, rocket booster in the last 5 years or so as far as the quality and catching up to offset printing. But obviously, if all of the other components in the package are consistent and the only variable is copy and art, well, then you can, combine, let's say, 7 segments into one.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously that's going to save you on production costs and postage. So, I don't know. I could really ramble on and on.
Yeah. And when you work with a production management firm, I think that, one of the things that we do is we try to look at some of those higher cost items as well. So maybe note cards, if you're mailing a note card package, if you're mailing a calendar. And we do look across our clients to say, okay, who's printing a wall size calendar throughout the year? Let's see if we can maximize them together, do 2, 3, however many runs you can support. But it does provide some of those smaller clients that may want to do a package with bells and whistles, but just can't afford it. But then when you gang them into a 10 million piece calendar run, their 25,000 calendars, it comes into the cost that they need.
Right.
So I think that that's also our responsibility as a production partner to use the leverage of all of our clients to help all of them. And I think the RWT does a good job with that.
Yeah, I think you can also hit on kind of the lessons that we all learned during the pandemic and the supply chain shortages and all that, to where obviously you're looking at different paper stocks, maybe not going with a name brand Husky or, whatever, where there might be a more cost-effective option. I think also looking at where, you might be mailing an insert package that could simply go as a self-mailer, right? Just with a different format change. I think everybody in the direct marketing industry was forced to look at those things during all that fun we had during the pandemic.
Right. And the consumable shortage, like the paper shortage too.
Definitely, probably the 3 most stressful years I've ever experienced.
And hopefully that will be it.
Yes, I agreed.
So let's talk a little bit about another, the big vertical market that RWT serves. What are some good practices for nonprofits for their direct mail campaigns?
It's such an interesting question, because I think that best practices can mean so many different things to different groups. Right. For example, I grew up in nonprofits thinking that I needed to get it as cost effective as possible. We're going to mail this in black and white. Maybe you can use one PMS color on it, but that's going to be the down and dirty cheapest, because we want all of our money to go to other program things within our organization, whatever. That's maybe not the case these days.
Right.
So there are a lot of different best practices that are out there. I mean, you can probably tell the theme of this for us is plan, plan, plan. So that would obviously be my top of mind best practice, is to plan and to bring your production people involved as soon as possible. But outside of that, a best practice could be, I need to bring in 20,000 new donors this year. So numbers tell me, I'm going to work with my list broker, numbers tell me that mailing a freemium, a full-size wall calendar, notepads, note cards is going to be the way to do that. My goal is to bring in the most amount of revenue, and it doesn't matter how many new donors I come in. So that may tell me something else. So a lot of it depends upon what your goals are as an organization, and you're sharing those goals out to everybody on your team so that we can all be on the same page to accomplish whatever it is that your organization is trying to accomplish. And so I would say best practices is communication, because going back to what Jeff said about production, we could talk about best practices in production all day. Eliminate your bleeds, stick with this, but that's not necessarily going to accomplish what everybody's looking for.
Gotcha. Yeah, it totally makes sense, and I agree with that too. You can, I've certainly seen that over the years in my work. Just it depends on the organization. One is totally different from the next.
Absolutely, and it's not just saying to your production person, okay, here's our plan, here's our creative, go ahead and do what you need to do, because there's so much more to it. Sorry, Jeff.
Well, I was just going to hit on kind of the nonprofit side of it, and kind of what Paul said is commercial side, you might be dealing with a specific product or service, right? But on nonprofits, you're talking about causes and missions that, can be drastically different one from the other. Right. And we saw it during the pandemic. Some nonprofits thrived and some just get killed, right? So it just really varies depending on who you're working with.
Mm-hmm. Yep. So today we see that direct mail is frequently, and maybe not enough, integrated with other channels. And this creates another challenge for production. So what should marketers and brands, nonprofits, be doing to ensure that there's a smooth process that gets everything and all the different channels delivered on time?
Are you going to say plan, Cindy?
I would love to. Plan. No.
Well, I think for us, I mean, what I think kind of, you've heard the talk of multi-channel and integration, and I guess now it's omni-channel, but I feel like it's always been the same thing. And I think on the nonprofit space, I think there's still, there's challenges there for them to keep up the pace with commercial and the data that they have. So certainly for us, it might be something as simple as like a triggered email, right? To where we have the mail tracking file so that we share that with their digital team so that they're, sending emails as the mail's delivered, rather than just doing a generic send of, oh, it's been 2 weeks, let's just send the entire email file. So it's really just kind of another, additional deliverable date in the production schedule for the most part. But certainly I guess I'd go back to informed delivery and mail tracking and triggered emails. I mean, that's really the bulk of what we're involved with. I don't know if you want to tack on top of that, Cindy.
Yeah, just to use the reporting that's available to you. RWT has a rule that we track 100% of our outbound mail that has an IMB on it. So if it doesn't have an IMB, we can't track it, but it has an IMB. 100% of our direct mail is tracked. And those reports can be generated on a scheduled or a need to basis. And using those reports then can help you build out a schedule for all those other campaigns. And we have a lot of clients that are requesting those at specific times, and they're available, can be sent. They provide a wealth of information. We can track inbound mail now. We can track the metrics for informed delivery. If you have a really great partnering tracking firm, which we do, we love our tracking firm. They can provide a lot of information that then can be shared across other teams within an organization.
Yep, I love it. It's all communication, right?
It's all plan, and talk.
Awesome. So, with your you guys' experience, what trends do you see unfolding in direct mail for the next couple of years?
I love the digital print. I mean, I'm going to touch on that and then let Jeff finish up. But, having come from an old school mail shop, I love that our partners, our vendor partners, are investing in moving us forward. And so I really think that and using your data to maximize the ability of that digital or print on demand is going to be a key.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Yeah, I would definitely echo that. I think, kind of goes back to what I said before, just how quickly digital printing has advanced in the last handful of years. And, we obviously expect that technology to just keep ratcheting it up year by year. I guess to piggyback kind of on that last topic we talked about with omni-channel and multi-channel, I think that will tie in with digital, right? The last facility I worked at, we invested millions of dollars in the last 5 years in digital equipment, but I didn't really see most of our clients take advantage of all that segmentation and really speaking to that end recipient, right? It was honestly a bit frustrating. But to be honest with you, I mean, I being a direct mail nerd, I mean, I pay attention to the mail that I get and any supporting digital, efforts that they make. I can count on one hand that the organizations that are doing it, and it's the big ones, right? It's Verizon, it's the people that have the resources and the bandwidth and the money to be able to do it and do it well. But certainly on the nonprofit side of things, I think that's what I see and would love to see, where they're segmenting and really speaking to these donors and being able to have the data to trust and utilize to build those omni-channel campaigns that are really successful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, well, it's an exciting time to be involved with all these different technologies and how they make mail more meaningful.
Yeah, it's funny to see direct mail still kind of, in our opinion, obviously we're biased, but right. it's still the centerpiece of these marketing campaigns.
Yeah, absolutely, and certainly for nonprofits.
Yep.
I mean, it's generating 60 to 70% of their fundraising income. Direct mail still is.
Yeah.
And obviously digital is growing, but there's so many things that are involved in the digital space now that it's interesting. I would also say that one of the things that I think that we're seeing, to go back to the initial conversation, the initial point I made earlier in our session, is that working with a production management firm that really understands the full picture. So because RWT hires a high level, we hire people that have come either from a printer or mail shop or an agency. So they have full knowledge of what these organizations are going through. And I see more reliance on our staff within the last 5 to 8 years to kind of help with driving creative, or not strategy per se, but helping understand what the production team can do for them. Mm-hmm. And so that reliance is, it seems to be a little bit heavier on our staff now than it was 10 to 15 years ago, when we really just were, turn and burn.
Right.
So that has been, I think our staff has risen to the occasion for that. And so it's fun to see everybody get excited about their clients.
Well, that's awesome, and that I think is a great place to wrap up. How can people find out more about RWT Production for help with their campaigns or partnerships, possibly?
Well, they can certainly just email me directly. My email is jthomas, that's THOMAS, at rwtproduction.com. You can certainly search me out on LinkedIn as well, just Jeff Thomas and RWT Production. And obviously we have a website that you can contact us through as well, and that's www.rwtproduction.com.
Simple. Awesome. And mine would be the same. If you can't reach Jeff, it's Cindy Barham. So CBARHAM at rwtproduction.com.
Awesome. Well, again, thank you, Cindy and Jeff, for joining us today. And thank all of you for being here as well. Again, if you have any questions for me or for our guests today, please leave them in the box below. You can show your support again for the program by tapping the like button and click on subscribe to be notified of new videos when they're added to the Who's Mailing What channel. If you want to be highlighted in a future episode of Meet the Mailers, I want to hear from you. So my contact info is found in the paragraph below by tapping Show More. Thanks again for watching Meet the Mailers, brought to you by Who's Mailing What, and see you next time.